Aging Matters on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging.
Hello and welcome to Aging Matters. This program is provided by and sponsored by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Barlet and I'm the Public Advocacy and Outreach Manager for the agency. Our program this evening is Suicide Prevention for Seniors, and my special guest this evening is Amy Groh, and she is the Director of Crisis and Intake Services for Service Access and Management, or SAM. So welcome, Amy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I know this is not a hot topic in terms of an everyday conversation piece, but suicide prevention certainly is most important, and then our program certainly focuses on the senior aspect of that. And I think that I looked at this as doing this program because a couple of things. One is that I think I was reading some recent celebrity type suicides, and I just thought that we aren't really, it is also a topic we're not discussing, but we need to and share information for everybody. And coincidentally, suicide or September is Suicide Awareness Month. So we hit them all, and we're going to start right in because we've got a lot to talk about. I think the first thing to start out with, I think people aren't quite sure. Suicide in seniors, come on, one or two here and there. So let's start with some statistics, Amy. I know we were talking about some before earlier, and what do you have to share with us as far as the numbers regarding seniors and suicide?
So, if we look at nationally,
okay,
we have almost 45,000 suicides across the age groups.
Okay.
Now these are 16. When you're looking at some of these national statistics, it takes a little longer for them to catch up. So that's in 2016. For the elderly specifically, it was in Pennsylvania in 2016.
Okay.
It was 1,970. So that's a lot of people
Almost 2,000.
that are dying by suicide and that have taken their own lives. If we're looking at Berks County and comparing, because that's where we're looking at specifically, just to give you some ideas, just to give you some numbers. So in 2016, we had 72 suicides total.
Okay.
Total.
Okay.
8 of those were by individuals over the age of 65. 8.
Okay.
That's a significant amount. In 2017, we had 69 suicides, and 19 of them were over the age of 65.
Oh, wow.
And so far this year, we have about 37 suicides, given the statistics that I have access to, and we have about 8 over the age of 65. So.
Okay.
It is a significant concern, and that's over the age of 65.
Okay.
So it depends on how you determine what aging is or what that number is. Certainly would be higher if we were looking at a number over 60.
I was just going to say, a lot of our programs for aging, that qualifiers are 60 and older, so we're still, there's probably a few more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's over the age of 65. So, that's a significant number of individuals. So it is a concerning, it's one of those topics that we don't talk about a lot, but it's affecting families, and so I think it is time that we talk about it.
Yep, and I think that it's not just, I think the other stigma is talking about it won't cause it, right?
Absolutely. Yes, having this conversation, whether it be with, youth, whether it be with, young adults, this is not going to plant any seeds. Oftentimes people who are considering suicide, they want to talk about their concerns, because I always, suicide is oftentimes about feeling alone and feeling not connected. And so when you find somebody, it's just like when you find something that you're interested in or what have you, you want to talk about it. When we're talking about suicide, it's what's on that person's mind. And so oftentimes they will be relieved by someone who's willing to have that conversation about something that most people aren't, So I think what is a key is that connection, and even if that connection is about a topic that's a tough one to have, it's a connection. And so I always encourage people, when we're talking about suicide prevention, one of the most important pieces for the person who's experiencing the suicidal thoughts, as well as for the family who might be having a family member go through that, is making connections and making sure that people feel like know that they're not alone.
Okay. And so I think that suicide and then again the seniors, what because we're not talking about it, are there symptoms, signs, and I know that everybody's so different and unique, so I'm trying to, make a quick show on some commonalities, I guess.
Yes.
And there probably is some. Could you share with us, and again, whether any of these particular pieces are distinct for the older adult, or across the board they're very similar for somebody younger?
Yeah, absolutely. So many of the signs and symptoms are things that, again, you could absolutely see across the entire age group. Typically, what we're looking for are marked changes. And when I say marked changes, I mean drastic changes. Things that, maybe they were typically very outgoing and social, and all of a sudden we're really kind of coming inside and not wanting to socialize with people, not wanting to talk, and that's just that process of, kind of coming within themselves and making considerations, and often certainly depression, which is very much a precursor to, to suicide. Not saying that because someone is depressed, they are going to be suicidal or will die by suicide. That's not the case. But many people who have died by suicide were depressed.
Yes, no depression.
But it's not it's not one equals the other at all. So certainly a change in eating habits. When you have someone who's really healthy eater in terms of enjoys eating and wanting to do that, and you're not concerned about that, to someone who eats very, very little. Certainly sleeping patterns would be a big one. Either someone who's sleeping a lot more than they would typically sleep, and another sign of depression, or somebody who is sleeping very little, that they can't sleep. Maybe their mind and their thoughts are racing, and they can't seem to relax, and they have an increased level of anxiety. So all of those things, although can certainly apply to any age group, certainly also apply to the elderly. And I think, as I mentioned before, and I'll probably say it many times throughout the show, is that connection. So how do we know how our friends or loved ones, how are their days going? Maybe they do live alone, but we can still have those conversations and gauge how are things going.
There's two things going in my mind. One is, and remember this last conversation because it's coming back, but when you talked about the sleep and depression and all that, I think that's the other thing, particularly with seniors. They don't talk about, I'll say, feelings. Right. So you don't hear them say, in a depression, that I'm feeling this way. So they have to also, even if that's separate and means nothing, as you said, to suicide, it's still something that needs to have attention. So I want to make sure we say that some of those things, you know, could be a variety of things and still should be presented, particularly to a physician, to begin to discuss and get treatment if necessary, depending what that is.
Right.
So I want
And to be honest about those feelings.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes, and you see a higher rate of suicide for males. And so when we're, you know, looking at that population and looking specifically at this age group, it's an age group that wasn't growing up expressing themselves. Like maybe we look at and have looked at for the past 20 years. We've talked about, you know, people expressing their feelings and how do we do that well. And so this is not an age group that may have had that in their upbringing. So when we're asking them to express themselves, it really is out of the box for many people.
Right.
And so it needs to be a conversation that happens, not necessarily today we're going to talk about feelings, but maybe it's a conversation that's, you know, broached gently and a little bit at a time. So I think keeping that in mind as well is that it's not on purpose. It's really almost talking a language that people haven't known.
Yep.
And so
that
that's
in itself is difficult and
for
seeking
both sides
to be able to do that. Yes.
Yes.
So do you want to stay with that connectivity? Like if we were looking at that, how was I, as a neighbor, friend, whatever, family member, and I, as you said, somebody might live alone, and if I'm going to call them and find out how they're doing, you know, there's one thing to call and say, hey, how are you? And that person says, oh, okay, and you let that go.
Yes.
You know, I can, you know, okay, great.
Yeah.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they're not, you know, so you have that, and if they're not connecting, and I'm assuming with connecting, it's those individuals that can maybe tell something's not right, not the same, because I've known them for a long time, or not connecting in terms of, in a variety of ways with others, right?
Right, okay. Absolutely. I think it's, you know, what people, you know, certainly feeling connected and having social outlets is going to decrease our level of depression and just isolation. And so that's really good. And then that also allows us to be seen by more people and develop relationships. And so more people know how we're doing. But, you know, having that connection too with family members is so important, and having, you know, that be an ongoing, you know, relationship. And I think to get to your question about how do you have that conversation, again, I think it's a gentle conversation, certainly to start. You know, if you're just kind of testing the waters, how are you doing? How are you sleeping? How are you eating? You know, those are conversations. Have you gone out to lunch lately? That we, you know, but if you have some level of concern for somebody, certainly being able, and I would say, you know, maybe hopefully this could be face to face. Like, I really am seeing that, you know, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, and I notice that you're down. And so certainly just reflecting what your experience has been, your experience, not theirs. Like, you know, it's what your experience as the person who's talking to them is. This is what I'm noticing. You know, are you okay? And you know, because sometimes people who are expressing some of these things might be thinking about suicide, and maybe you're not comfortable with that question. But what I want to do is make sure that you're safe. And so, are you safe? Because some of the things that you're showing me make me think that maybe you're not doing so well.
One of the other things that come to mind then with that socialization and the connection are, again, back to the seniors, is that, and again, we use our senior population from 60 to 106 or higher, but if they are by nature of their own medical condition, is this I see maybe a difference between that age and the younger age as far as living alone or having medical issues that also prevent them from maybe going to a senior center. That might be some place to go to talk or to get out. There probably is some other distinct issues at a senior level that may not be there with a younger person.
Absolutely.
Would you say that?
I would certainly say, you know, it's hard because oftentimes you have people who, you know, as they age, their losing friends in terms,
Yes, yes.
and, the families moving away, so they find themselves in a tough situation. But typically, especially if there's some connection to a religious organization or, that is a great way
Even a
to
neighbor,
socialize.
right?
Certainly a neighbor where, starting those conversations. But I think really as a community too, we have a responsibility as neighbors as well to reach out. Let's talk, let's connect with who we are living with. And so I think if we know that there's people who, might not have too many people around them, how can we do the same? So certainly as well, when we're looking at aging population, doctors are another good connection for that. So doctors are often our gauge to say, and many doctors are asking questions about depression. But again, that's a time that we need to be honest with those doctors. And oftentimes, though, they have a ton of resources that are available. So I think that there's things out there. I think that there's transportation out there. It's just a matter of reaching out and wanting it.
Well, and I hope that, seeing this, it sparks somebody to do that. And what I would like to say is we do have a few minutes for phone and call-ins if you'd like to. The phone number to call us is 610-378-0426. So let's, Amy, go back to, so we saw, some people, we were talking earlier, see suicide as a solution, and we're kind of saying that, no, suicide itself there are answers. There are answers. That's not it, and it is treatable.
Yes.
So let's kind of say, turn into that as far as what can someone do? How do they begin? It's so...
I think really, as I was thinking about this in preparation, we're asking people to look at things a little bit differently. This population may have had experiences that were negative, or have had lived experience, or maybe a family member who have maybe been hospitalized, and so those things that maybe are how that person remembers what mental health treatment is. I think it's important to make sure that people know that things have certainly changed. As medicine has improved and changed, so has our mental health treatment.
Okay.
And so I think one piece to the treatment is that it is vastly different than it was in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and you don't see nearly the side effects that you would have seen physically seeing side effects, and even treatment. People don't go inpatient for long periods of time these days, if that's even the solution or the treatment recommendation. Treatment is very much community-based, and very much could be just a simple doctor appointment, if that's what's necessary, or maybe some therapeutic intervention. But I think it's important for people to know that, it is not what it used to be.
Okay.
And so that brings us to the fact that, yes, treatment and solutions are there. There are answers to so many of the concerns and the questions and the symptoms that people are feeling, that we really just have so many options available.
Where do I
us.
start? Where does somebody start? If they're recognizing some of those things and saying, this isn't right. I don't feel right, and I'm feeling these things. Where do they go? Where do they start?
So I think it depends on how acute is the situation.
Okay.
But certainly if someone is at an immediate risk, go to the hospital.
Sure.
Call crisis. Our crisis number is up on the screen.
Okay.
Call crisis, and that's for family members and for the person who might be experiencing it. But certainly if folks are struggling, talk to your doctor.
Okay.
Make that appointment. Talk to your doctor and have those conversations. And your doctor can certainly direct you on how to go. but we are always available at SAM. And so having that conversation with us and just calling for a family member to get some suggestions on services, suggestions on, how to proceed, we're available to that.
They can kind of talk to somebody there who has experience, certainly, in helping them to figure out
Absolutely.
where do I go
Yes.
from here? Maybe they had a doctor's appointment, but they think they still need more.
Yes.
Then there's some available resources that service access
Sure.
and management folks can help them with.
Yes.
Kind of give them some good guidance.
Yes.
Okay.
And in addition, you can always also call your insurance company. Then you know
Okay.
exactly who's covered under your plan and things like that. And certainly if you don't have coverage for some reason, and certainly we're talking about the 65 and over population, so many have Medicare. But if for some reason that isn't the case and there's no coverage, certainly we can assist and help and get funding and things like that.
Okay. Oh,
so
all right.
that's important to know too. There are answers. All of the things that people think might be a barrier, there's typically an answer to that, and we
Okay.
can help them get there.
So if after they might call their doctor, whatever, they might recommend there are some other resources in our community. They might feel comfortable. There are counselors or social
Absolutely.
workers out in the community, right?
Yes.
So what might that, it might be a counselor, a therapist. What, can you tell me what would, for people, like a difference? What is the difference,
Well, the difference, for a therapist or a counselor, that would typically be just a doctor appointment to have conversation, and that person can certainly help to, come up with maybe coping mechanisms for some anxiety and, some solutions to maybe something that's come up or some stressors that you have. Where a psychiatry appointment is going to look a little bit different, and it will be, with someone who can prescribe medication. So a therapist typically doesn't prescribe medications, a psychiatrist does. And that person would be the one who could, really focus on your symptoms and helping you find a balance. But I should also note that it takes time to do that.
Okay.
Just like maybe your heart medication didn't work, or you needed to make some adjustments.
Yes, yeah.
You're making adjustments with another organ, with your brain, and
Yeah.
so it might take some time. So I urge people to not be frustrated with that process and
Okay.
stick with it.
Okay.
Stick with it, and be in communication with those folks. But for something, less intense, the doctor might be able to treat that. Your medical doctor may be able to treat that and be comfortable treating that as well.
Okay, and know that, I guess, that it doesn't have to be one set way.
Right.
You can have your medical doctor only, or a combination of all
Absolutely.
of those things that you just mentioned that really is going to work for that individual because of their own unique circumstances and
Right.
issues with that.
Absolutely,
Okay, all righty.
yes.
In a couple of minutes, the resources or reaching out into the community, any last, thoughts as far as that
Sure.
goes?
I think a few things, because we want to educate not only the seniors, but the family members as
Yeah.
well. So there are support groups. Greater
Oh,
Reading Mental
okay.
Health Alliance has some great support groups. NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, has support groups. So those are great organizations. If you're not wanting to do that, we have some great resources on our Suicide Prevention Task Force website, which is www.ruokberks.com.
Okay.
The letter R, the letter U,
U,
the letter O, the letter K, Berks.com. And so we have some great videos on there, statistics, tips on how to ask questions. So that's a great resource as well.
Good. So why don't we put your information on the screen so that if they didn't quite catch NAMI and all those others, that they can contact you if you want to share that information.
Sure. Yes, and so, again, just...
And they can call you and then get that, right?
Yes.
And we have that.
I think what's so important is that family members and the individuals get support. Again, we talked about connection, and so that's connection for everybody. And so, NAMI is a great one. Again, Greater Reading Mental Health Alliance is fantastic. So, those are great connections that you can help and understand through even people who've had lived experience or other people who've gone through, family members with the same concerns. You can connect with them. So
Okay.
feel free to, to give us a call, and we have that information, and it's available online as well.
Good, great. And again, you can call me at the Berks County Area Agency on Aging, and I can connect you with Amy and folks at Service Access and Management and other resources in the community. Quickly, before we sign off this evening, I just wanted to share something a little different that is happening in another month. It's a Scams Against Seniors symposium that is happening on Saturday, October 20th. From 8:30 to 12:30 at the Scottish Rite Cathedral in the auditorium in West Reading. We've got some great presenters, Pastor Ronald Costin, and who's a PhD attorney at law, and Mary Bach, AARP Consumer Task Force Chair, presenting. We have representatives from the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, certainly the Pennsylvania Crime Prevention Association, and others. And I just wanted you to know that it's all about scams, fraud, identity theft, all of the what it is, how to prevent it, and again, focused on seniors. Please, we want you to come out. We want you to learn how not to be a victim. And background of this briefly was that it is part of the Michael Meitzler Award that is sponsored by the Crime Alert Berks County. So we hope to have more of these on a regular basis, annually at least. So please, we encourage you to come out. Again, if you have any questions, you can call me at the Area Agency on Aging at 610-478-6500 for that, or for more information and resources with regards to suicide prevention for seniors. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.
Aging Matters on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging.